I'm excited. Let's do it.
3 seconds. Yes, we're live.
Hello.
Yeah, you can start.
Everybody.
We're live. Yeah, we're live. Hello, everyone.
Good. I need to wake up first. I'm sorry. So, hey, everybody. How are you all doing? My name is Ilya. It's our 5th live stream today. I'm joined again by my teammates from GTON Capital, two Alexes, Alex Pupashev and Alex Telegin, and also Felipe Gonzalez from Anchor, a major node service provider, one of our closest, dearest partners. So again, we're presenting to you today GTON Academy, which is a live stream series. It aims to break down different concepts, foundational concepts from DeFi and blockchain and crypto. We're hosting this set of live streams with Web3 London. Today our live stream is dedicated to DeFi infrastructure, essentially everything in blockchain that is not blockchain. So we're going to talk about dApps, different kinds of nodes, Oracle services. We're going to talk about maybe some developer toolkits, whatever the time will allow. And at the very end, we will have a separate time period dedicated to your questions that you're going to be asking us in the YouTube chat. So we're going to start with the overview. Let's talk about the foundational building block of DeFi. So Alex, if you want, you can take it away.
So it's the question to me because two Alexes here.
Could be any Alex that wants to chip in.
Yeah, no problem. I can start. Sure. Actually, yeah. So the basis of what we need the infrastructure for, especially like in the newer blockchains, of course, that everyone is using, everyone is building upon, is the dApps. Because basically the first decentralized infrastructure that we had only one purpose, and it's basically to transfer funds from account A to account B. This is the foundation of Bitcoin, and this is what was happening previously. But after Ethereum, basically the major focus is shifted towards the decentralized applications, and we need to make sure that they are always available, that you can always interact with them, etc. Because of course there is a distributed ledger that can execute the code, but without the infrastructure to support it, and without the means to actually make sure that the very big audience can access this infrastructure simultaneously, you can't really interact with what people are building. So that's why infrastructure, especially with for the types of new applications that are being developed, is really the key.
So let me go back a few steps and
sure.
and ask you and explain M5 question. What would be the difference between apps and smart contracts? What gets added to the application in order for it to be called a dApp?
Yeah, exactly. So a dApp is basically a smart contract plus the interface to interact with it. So the infrastructure, of course, the smart contracts are always in place, because once you deploy them, up until they are destroyed, there is a possibility that etc. But anyway, so they exist on the blockchain, and you need the means to interact with those. The purest form of how you can interact with blockchain is basically to talk directly to the blockchain through the nodes. You can create a node like Ethereum node, for example, on your own, and try to query it in order to interact with the decentralized application. But of course, it's a lot of work, too much hassle to maintain your node. So that's why you need someone to a provider that can give you access to this application. But there is another layer, of course, especially if you are building something that you want people to really interact with, and this is the interface. Like for example, if you go to Uniswap and take a look at especially Uniswap v3, there are so many different contracts that you have to be aware of in order to interact with an application. But it's actually built into a very concise UI that is easy to navigate, to add the position, remove liquidity, interact, swap, etc. This is what makes users really use the application, because it has to be something simple that you can interact with. And so the dApp is always the UI, the means to interact with it in order to do some changes to the blockchain.
I have a question to Felipe, actually. How you will explain what is a dApp for your grandma?
I mean, I think the explanation of Alex was good. I mean, a dApp fundamentally is really like the interface that interacts with the smart contract directly, right? Whereas in Web 2, you're not interacting right with the smart contract when you interact with an interface. So I think that's the biggest difference. About permissionless, I will say that currently about 99.9% of the dApps are permissionless. However, in the future, I personally believe that there will be more permission dApps. So I will say the dApps do not necessarily always need to be permissionless. They can also become permission. And going into that direction is what the industry calls like CDFI, right? Which is like the convergence between CFI and DeFi, right? So I personally believe this is something that might become more popular in the future, just because of the fundamental reason that ultimately the smart contract is fully automating financial infrastructure. When you interact with a smart contract, you always have a token, and that token has a value. So you're basically, your infrastructure embeds money in it, right? So that's why it gets hacked, because you have money involved, and it's very important to make it secure. But the fact that you fully automate that financial infrastructure is also very attractive, because as you know, banks, for example, they have, let's say, a cost to income ratio about 70%, and it's mostly people, because there is a lack of automation, right? And basically that convergence with CDFI, I personally think it will allow these, let's say, crypto fintech companies that kind of interact with DeFi to generate yield, for example, but they're still Web 2 companies in terms of their business model, mostly. I think they will like a lot to automate, right, their operations using potentially in the future DeFi products and smart contracts a bit more than what they're currently doing.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, you think they're going to employ some sort of like a middleware to interact with blockchains while remaining in the centralized field ideologically, I would say, but they will still can somehow leverage those things that blockchains can provide, right? While not becoming fully decentralized.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example of, BlockFi or Celsius, right? They enable to have like ETH deposit, like a savings account. So imagine so easy, right? You connect with your email, you bought with fiat some Ethereum, you just deposit there, and then you're like, wow, I just earned like 4% yield with one click. But actually what's happening under the hoods is that, they were using, for example, ETH liquid staking and other strategies, right? So it's almost like a fund, right? They're making investment decisions to generate yield with some level of diversification, and they're making those investment decisions for you, and you trust them that they're able to provide yield to you, and they have like responsible risk management. So then, every company has their own risk management policy that they believe fits the risk profile of their customers. But ultimately, what they're already doing to some extent is to really extract the yield that is enabled by DeFi, right? And they bring it to users that are not interacting directly, right, with DeFi. However, I doubt that they have like fully automated like asset management to rebalance everything automatically. So I'm pretty certain that they have like fund managers and, young financial analysts that are looking at that every day and looking at all the platforms and rebalancing. And, that's ultimately, is a operational expense. And, that potentially can be improved and, fully automated eventually.
Yeah, that's true. It's all
Cool.
about.
So it could be like the best of both worlds, essentially, in
Yes.
financial management, or the worst. No. So, anyways, if you don't have anything else to add, we can move on to the next topic. So,
Yeah,
or
let's
Alex,
go.
maybe Peter, we don't want to. Okay, sure.
Yeah, let's do next.
Right. So let's talk about like infrastructure in general. Let's do like a quick overview. And actually, the next slide is going to be about the Ethereum infrastructure as a big example.
Yeah, so
looking at the list, yeah, go ahead.
Speaking about the DeFi infrastructure, like even speaking about DeFi, we're mostly talking about the products, right? Like how yields are generating, how we can do swaps, how we can do leverage, whatever. It's like it's all about the connection between a user and the DApp, right? But the thing is, it is very important to understand how the DeFi infrastructure is actually working. Because sometimes people can say DeFi is not real DeFi just because everything works on Infra, and then Infra has some issues, nothing works. People start thinking that it wasn't DeFi, it was just like a server. They don't understand how it works, right? Because lack of education, of course, and we have to cover that. We have to talk about alternative. We have to talk about of course there are a lot of components, and it doesn't mean if one component, which is like most popular, doesn't work, it doesn't mean that the network doesn't work, right? So it's just like how it's structured at the moment, and it's also temporary. So speaking about infrastructure, we can say that of course we have nodes of the blockchain nodes. Actually speaking about nodes and the layer twos, we spend a lot of time for explanation, so I'm not sure we can go deep into the nodes and the consensus today. But what is also important is that there are other parts of infrastructure. For example, wallets. Like wallet is one of the key differential between the Web 2 and Web 3. Because Web 2 is basically you are communicating as your browser is sending commands to the server, right? But then you have Web 3. You have something more. You have private key, and the private key is actually your representation, like who you are, like what you are signing, what you agreed upon. And of course there are also oracles needed for the communication between the blockchain, smart contracts, and the real world data. There are many types of different oracles. We will consider that. And analytics, like speaking about analytics, it's important because then you have a blockchain, you have a lot of transactions on it, right? And using the simple analytic tool or simple language for the for the data, you can create many type of dashboards and understand what's going on. So let's go. We have limited time, so let's do faster. I will try to explain as quick as possible.
Yeah, sure. We can have like a more free-form conversation at the very end.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to start with Ethereum. So
maybe I just wanted to add on the node side. Maybe for the audience, I guess there is like fundamentally two different category of nodes, I guess, which is the validator nodes, where you really validate the transactions. And then you have the other type of nodes like full nodes and so on that allow you to consume information from the blockchain. But I think that's like an important distinction to make, that those two type of nodes is probably very distinct ones, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously then to consume information, we will see later, I guess, there is then different type of nodes to get different type of data and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So they both are called nodes, but they're quite different in terms of what they do.
Oracle's nodes also called nodes. Yeah, nodes is just like a server which is doing something. Ilya, can you please put the next slide?
Oh, it is actually the next slide. I wanted you to touch upon all the different like key projects in the Ethereum infrastructure. So can you just pick a couple of those which you find the most interesting and talk about?
Of course, speaking about wallets, we'll talk about Metamask. It's a most popular wallet, so of course we have to talk about it. Speaking about oracles, we'll touch Chainlink. because it's again most popular. And speaking about node infrastructure, I think Anchor, and we'll talk more about Anchor in the end of this live stream, because we are using it, and it is solving a lot of issues which we currently have working with the DeFi infrastructure as a project owners, but it is also important for regular users. Then some issues, for example, with infra happening.
Okay, sure. Let's go into more detail. So you want to start with talking about MetaMask?
Yeah, of course, wallets. It's like then you are in Web3 like for many years. For you, it's absolutely obvious that you have something like MetaMask or whatever wallet, and every communication with the dApp is actually through the wallet. But try to explain that for the guy who is not from the Web3 or never like. Even crypto trader, right? For example, like he has an experience of trading on Binance or everywhere, but we think that this is like absolutely clear for anyone, but it's still like 1% of the people who understand what Web3 wallet is. But I think this is like most crucial differentiation between Web2 and Web3. It's just wallet, and wallet basically has three main not the features, but action. So the first action is actually the keep private key. So you have a private key. It's representation of your whatever. It's your wallet. It's your identity. If we are speaking about, I don't know, Web3 social networks in the future, right? So the wallet is keeping your private key, but also the wallet is able to sign the message. So it's not message which is going to the blockchain. It can be stored everywhere. It's just custom message which you can sign. And for off-chain projects like, I don't know, Snapshot, it's actually enough. So if you are DAO participants, you are signing transactions for agreed or disagree with the protocol changes, you can just sign the message. You're not broadcasting transactions everywhere, right?
So
we lost him.
There's Alex.
He froze.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Picture, nothing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all good.
you're back. Sorry, I have to go back. Okay.
So yeah, the last part is the sign and broadcast transaction, and this is like most important part, because it's basically communication with the blockchain and creating the new record within the in the smart contract, or communication with the smart contract. So the wallet is the wallet is a tool for letting users to do that. Next slide, please.
Sure.
And yeah, the important part, the RPC nodes. What it is, Ilya, please next slide, because this slide will be repeated again. Please next. Okay, so what is RPC nodes and why it's important? There's a difference between Web3 dApp and Web2 dApp, right? We have a blockchain, we have a browser which clients is using for communication with the internet, basically. And the thing is, if we have to create the new record or communication with a smart contract, we have to ask user to sign the transaction and then broadcast this transaction to the blockchain. And the thing is how the browser is communicating with the blockchain. The browser is communicating with the blockchain via RPC nodes, right? Please, next slide. Speaking about Metamask or another wallet, if you're gonna communicate as a user with any network, you can basically insert the URL for the RPC node you are communicating with, like where you are sending the signed transactions. And with the Metamask case, it's easy to see how to add any network here. Next slide. So again, we have server, we have client, and the client is actually communicating via RPC, which is called a remote procedure call, right? With the server, and the server is communicating with the network. It can be a part of the network as well. I think Felipe already mentioned that there are many types of nodes like full nodes, light nodes, and the mining nodes, right, which is like core of consensus. But yeah, basically client is not communicating directly with the network. There has to be some kind of input for that, right? And this is basically what RPC is. Next one. This slide is showing much broader picture, how it works. Again, we have user, which is sending RPC requests to the node. And we have different types of nodes. Again, Felipe mentioned that we have light node, we have archive node, which is basically for the data from a long time. We have full node, which is like read-only. And one of the node is actually the target node for the RPC call. And next slide, please. The real DApp is not just communicating with a smart contract, because real DApp is also communicating with a server, right? For example, if you open whatever Uniswap, Pancake, whatever DApp people are communicating, they have two types of backends, right? First type of backend is real backend, like for the HTML page at least, right? It has to be loaded, it has to show some data. So this is like app server, and this is classical Web2 thing, because it's basically the user from the browser is asking the server to send him like HTML is rendering in the browser, and this is how it goes. If user trying to do something, do swap, do whatever, he's sending signed message to the full node, right? And then this is actually the right communication with the blockchain, and this is how the blockchain state is changing. And the last slide. And if we have advanced dApps, our backend is also complicated, because it has its own way to communicate with the blockchain. For example, if we have a lot of data from the blockchain, and we have to do some kind of cache, like do indexing, filtering, a lot of procedures for that, right? Just to show it in a better way for the user. We also have communication between the server and the RPC node, right? So this is how it works. And please, next slide. And Anchor, one of the biggest provider here, and especially for the server sites, we can say that GTON Capital is using Anchor a lot for the infrastructure. Speaking about the client side, probably you all know that Metamask and Infura, they are connected to each other. Of course, it's like it's customizable. Like if you open the custom RPC, you can add any network and do any configuration, but by default it's Infura. So I remember last time, probably like several months ago, right? Infura have some issues, and then like all the crypto Twitter was about like we have no decentralization here. So I'm finishing here. So let's just speak a bit and then go to the next topic.
Yeah, sure. Maybe Felipe has something to add. First of all, thanks a lot for this nice description of the user flow of how actually wallets communicate with RPC nodes. But since Felipe is in this field, maybe have something interesting to add.
Yeah, sure. So I will say the difference between Anchor, Pocket Network as well versus the other node providers is mostly that Anchor and Pocket Network, it's a network of RPC nodes. So it means that in Infura, they have their own nodes, right, that they operate themselves. And then when you make RPC calls with them, well, you're basically consuming nodes that they're managing themselves. The same for Alchemy and QuickNode. With Anchor and Pocket Network, actually, it's like an open market where actually people that are technical, they can provide their RPC nodes to the network. They can monetize their infrastructure. And then you as a consumer making RPC calls, you will be making RPC calls from a network. So here there is also the possibility to consume your RPC calls from the closest possible node from your IP location. So for example, in the case of Anchor on Ethereum network, we have like a node in Dubai, for example. So if you live in Dubai, you will technically have lower latency because you don't have to basically send your request to a node that is located in Germany, or somewhere else. So that part is important. Also about the decentralization aspect. If there is one node that is failing, it's like trial and error. It will try a second time, and then it will just try with another node. So I think that aspect in terms of reliability is also important. on the node, stack of things.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's really nice to know. So Alexei, do you want to move to the next topic then?
Hey, just 1 second here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just thinking about how centralized the world of RPC node provider is right now. I mean, I'm not talking about centralization in terms of like, there is no opportunity to create their own RPC nodes. I'm just talking about like the tail. Like we have 99% who is using one, and then it's like going down. So Felipe, what do you think? How to diversify this market? Like what we have to do to have more different types of nodes on the center?
Well, yeah, sure. I think when you talk about RPC nodes is really like the basic layer that you have, but usually in Fury, Alchemy, and everyone, they have like another business that is built on top, which is like the blockchain APIs, right? So if you're a Web2 company and you want to, for example, have to provide blockchain analytics, so actually you will need to read data from the blockchain. But how do you want to read, for example, some APR of some pool on PancakeSwap? Actually, we estimated for in one example that you need to actually consume 12 RPC calls to get the APY of some farming pool in some DEX, right? So obviously, as a developer, that will be really a pain, right? That you need to estimate how they are calculating it so that then you can do it yourself. So what they do, I mean, most of the market is that you will just go to these infrastructure providers, you make an API call, and basically every provider has, let's say, its own specialty. Some, they love to focus on NFTs, right? So then they will try to see if there is any NFT doing wash trading and so on and so forth. So they will have customized API calls, very advanced for that type of thing. But if you go to stakingrewards.com, well, they also have some API, and then they're going to provide you data about the yields and that kind of stuff, right? So, I mean, even DeFi Llama, right? They started to provide their own API, right? Providing information like what is the TVL of that platform, for example. So yeah, that part is also, I will say, important. And then maybe a risk of the centralization aspect is, well, then you need to trust these providers, that they're giving you the right information, that they're kind of reading from the blockchain. So that's one of the main reasons why we decided to decentralize our RPC nodes. It was really, that if you have different RPC nodes from different providers, then it is, much safer, I will say, to consume information, because otherwise you might have some, conflict of interests. We all know that there is also like high frequency trading and that kind of stuff. So it's you having information like faster than anyone else. There is also always an incentive to kind of gain from that, right? So yeah, so there is a lot of things in stake with that basic infrastructure, and I personally believe that having RPC node network is the best, and then you can have more providers that just focus on the API layer, and they do custom API calls, in line with their specialty, that can be DeFi yields, NFTs, or whatever they like. Also, it's very expensive to run RPC nodes, by the way. So it's very capital intensive, right? So I think, for example, Alchemy has been doing a fantastic job in scaling, right? Which is, you raise capital, you increase, your capacity, you sell it, and, it's kind of almost a winner takes all approach. If you have a player that is growing very, very fast with a lot of capital and so on, because this is all very capital intensive, that can also put, one of these players in a dominant position, where, then they can kind of put all other providers potentially out of market eventually, who knows. So having a RPC node network, again, is important, because it allows also other smaller API providers to compete, because it's a little bit like cloud computing and the servers, right? Like the main pitch, it was like, oh, you're like a small marketplace, and you will have more and more consumers, so you don't want to set up your own servers. If you have exponential growth, you just use the cloud. pay-as-you-go model, you can scale much faster, and it's more reliable, and so on and so forth. So here, I think it's a little bit the similar play with the network of RPC nodes, which is a pay-as-you-go model. And if you have more traffic in your dApp, well, then you can scale without necessarily, having to pay too much.
Yeah, I like the analogy with the clouds, actually.
Yeah, and actually, it's a very interesting point that you made about there being different kinds of APIs for different kinds of use cases. It's actually quite a nice segue into one of the next topics that we're going to talk about, which is blockchain analytics. But I think it doesn't go next. I think we first have to touch upon oracles. So yeah, and actually, you mentioned this problem of trust, which is central to everything that's being done on the blockchain. One of the crucial problems that is being solved is actually how do we get the data from the real world into the blockchain? How can we make it trustworthy? And so one of the ways to solve that is actually to use decentralized Oracle networks. So anybody wants to chip in and mention anything interesting about the Oracle problem?
Actually, my observation about that, honestly, I personally feel that the most dominant use case for oracles is really like to take prices from centralized exchanges, right? And creating price feeds. I'm not sure if there is like any other popular use case, but I feel like that's really the dominant one currently.
But it's actually the most use case of everything in crypto. It's trading, right? So of course,
maybe it's also important to mention for the audience the importance, right, to have a price feed. So especially for lending platforms, like the liquidation, it pretty much depends on the price, right, of your token. And obviously, if it's traded in multiple places, you need to have like a player that is going to estimate, what is the average price across all the decentralized exchanges, but also centralized exchanges, which, usually is the case. So yeah, I think that's really where, Chainlink got very popular. Obviously, they expanded now, right? They're doing keeper nodes, they do cross-chain communication, and that kind of stuff. So for example, dApps like Stargate, that are like routers, to allow to move funds, from one chain to another. So they're relying mostly on Chainlink, for example, right, for the cross-chain communication part. So obviously they expanded. So I think they're really going into like let's say a full-fledged, Web3 infrastructure provider that is not only going to provide oracles, but they're going to basically expand horizontally to different stacks of the infrastructure, because as we're discussing here, there is plenty of nodes. So yeah, there is plenty of infrastructure service to provide to the community.
Yeah, sure. Actually, speaking about the use case for the oracles, you mentioned price feeds, but I think there are two actually the most important use cases: price feeds and bridges. Because when we're talking about bridges, it's all about oracles. And sometimes it's not obvious, but it's basically oracles. Like one is getting data from the centralized exchanges, or or not even exchanges. And the second one is getting data from another chain. To one chain from another chain, because one chain for another chain is basically the external world. They're not connected, even if they are both blockchains. It doesn't mean anything. It's just external world. So,
but this is not Oracle, is it? It's just the bridge that's doing it.
Yeah, but it's basically based on oracles. Like you can call it differently, but it's oracles, right?
I think many of them, they call it relay nodes.
Yeah, relay nodes.
Yeah, to relay information from one chain to another.
Yeah, but Oracle is more broad term. It's about sending data in the blockchain from outside, outside world, from the non-blockchain space. So if we are talking about bridge, one blockchain is basically external world for another blockchain, and we need data from this chain. So in terms of oracles, it is here. Of course.
So you need then you need a set of providers, right? So to basically tell you, hey, what is the information from the outside world? Can you tell me what it is? And you ask to multiple ones, right? Hey, can you tell me what is the information from outside world? And if everyone is telling you, the same thing, well, then it is a more trusted, obviously.
Yeah. So Ilya, can you push next? Next slide.
It's empty.
Oh,
Also wanted to mention that besides there being price feeds, there's also this importance of proving a certain balance in a certain account, which might also become handy when you talk about connecting to different blockchains in a bridging situation. So yeah, this slide is empty somehow. I'm not sure why.
It's not empty. I think you have cached version. This is basically the data aggregation classification. But anyway, I can mention that, and
I can try to refresh if you're saying that it's a cached version.
Yeah,
do you want me to try to refresh? Okay.
So yeah, about oracles. Yeah, you see.
Okay.
It
sure. Give me a second.
I have no idea how it actually happened, but yeah. So speaking about oracles, most often the oracles, they are solving issue with the data aggregation. As Philip mentioned, we are working with different data sources, and not even data sources, but also those who are communicating with the data sources, they can provide different information. The difference can be big one, small one, doesn't matter. We have to aggregate the data to have the answer closer to the real answer, right? Closer to the real truth, what is going on in the outside world. And the data aggregation issue can be solved in both ways. First, it is off-chain aggregation. So what does mean? It means that if you have Oracle node, you basically can read the information from different data sources. Let's imagine we are tracking the price feed from centralized exchanges about Ethereum, right? So of course we can look at different exchanges. We can do even computation differently. I mean, we can use volumes as a average average weighting aggregation, or we can just get last trade, whatever, like different types of how you are actually getting the data is basically the data source. And of course, sometimes you have outliers, and some outliers are absolutely obvious. For example, if the exchange doesn't work at the moment, of course, you have to ignore it, right? There is, can be a random numbers or even zeros. So you have to do filtration. And this is happening off chain. I mean, like it's basically, the server application, which is collecting data from different APIs, and then aggregate it, do some kind of computation, like, remove outliers, do sum, do average, whatever. It depends on how your Oracle is working. And then we have another thing with the data aggregation, and this is on-chain aggregation. I mean, if you have network of oracles, each of the oracle is able to provide the information about the price, about the current price of ETH, for example, right? And so on-chain you have different data, and you have to somehow aggregate it, right? But because it's happening on-chain, because it's happening within the smart contract, this is called on-chain aggregation. So most of the oracles, they are solving, like Oracle providers, for example, DIA and Bend, they are really good in terms of off-chain aggregation. So this is why, for example, we are also using them and working with them as a data source. They have a lot of efforts for that. But at the moment, the leader on the market for the on-chain aggregation is Chainlink. And I think it's obvious, like most of the dApps are using on-chain aggregated data from the Chainlink. So we'll talk about Chainlink a bit more. Next slide, please.
Just wanted to mention here maybe the difference between APIs, and oracles. So if you're getting information from an oracle, your smart contract is going to be able to interact with it. However, like a smart contract cannot make an API call and integrate that information, right? So that's also something that, we had also that issue with some partners, for example, to provide the staking API of liquid staking. So we had like an API, but then we had the partner, a lending partner that wants to basically index the interest rate model of the lending markets with the staking rewards. Well, then you need to build an oracle to allow their smart contracts to read that API. Right. So there is also that small difference that I just wanted to mention.
Yeah. It's,
how did you address this, by the way? Like, what was the approach to building such an oracle? Or were you not in charge?
I mean, we're currently building it, but like the staking API, for example, is based on our backend, and the price feeds. I mean, we yeah, for the price feeds as well. Basically, we use keeper nodes, and we're using our backend. So first we use the keeper nodes, but if they fail for any reason, well, then we have our backend as a backup. So for the staking API, like a similar approach can be done, where basically we know what is like the formula, right, to calculate the staking API, and then we just put that into the Oracle, and we can tell keeper nodes to make, you know, the call, for example, every day, please tell me what is the API, and if they fail, well, we then have potentially our backend that can, you know, help out, so that, you know, the data doesn't show us like zero.
Exactly? Yeah, how exactly does it help? Because you need this data on chain, so someone has to write it down on chain.
Yeah.
And if the keeper node fails, so like, what is the backup to get the data to the chain?
I mean, you need basically, I mean, we have our backend, so obviously we have quite a significant backend, so that can provide like a backup. But ideally, yeah, we will prefer to have the keeper nodes to perform that work. Yeah, but then we also need to account that, you know, potentially they might fail. So ideally, you will rely on multiple networks of keeper nodes, right?
Yes.
But yeah, right now we're just like assessing Gelato, Chainlink, and yeah, if you use multiple networks, well, then you also need to pay much more, right? Like typically, like I don't know, Chainlink is like 3 times cheaper than Gelato, for example. So 3 times more expensive. Sorry. So yeah, using multiple keeper networks, that also increases your operational costs, right?
Oh yeah,
and that can be quite a lot, right? Just for liquid staking, for the price feeds, for example, of only one DEX, that costs like, yeah, in average about $150 per month. That's only one token, right? So then if you have multiple liquid staking tokens in multiple chains and everything, that can be quite a big operational expense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why there's actually the market for on-chain data aggregation, like they don't use any off-chain data at all. Like, for example, in Uniswap with 3 oracles, price oracles that have built-in mechanisms to allow you, like, at least to get like some like time average price without like relying on anyone writing anything to the blockchain. So yeah, it's an interesting issue.
Yeah, the more reliable data you need, the more you have to pay. This is like a basic thing. Yeah, and speaking about on-chain aggregation, here's an example of like it's like, you know, a visual example. For example, we have 400 price for something, for some token, and but it's actually different from different oracles. Why? Just because they can they can have some delays. For example, they can check information which is not, you know, which is not truth anymore. So it can be penalized. Used to it's penalized if it's happening because of that, or the information can be aggregated differently. For example, you know, the different nodes, they have different approach for the outliers removal, right? Or the different oracles, they have different data sources, original data sources they are aggregating. So of course they have different data points, raw data points for the particular asset, and the smart contract is aggregating them. So we have some numbers like 400. Ilya, please, next slide. We'll look at the real example. So this is a real example, like, I don't know, half an hour ago, about the Ethereum price currently on chain, on the Ethereum chain. And this is how it works with the Chainlink. So basically we have many oracles. Every oracle is providing the price feed, you know, for the closest price of ETH, and one of the oracle is actually the transmitter, who is putting the aggregate information into the chain. And we see different oracles. Some of them are pretty famous, some of them not so. But yeah, every oracle has its own reputation, and because of high reputation, the DeFi space is basically relying on those oracles for the lending protocols, for the whatever, like stablecoin protocols and such things. Actually, I have a question to Felipe and Alex as well. Which applications are using oracles, except lending protocols?
Stablecoin protocols.
which is most often the lending protocol as well, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Stablecoin protocols is like, I usually classify it as like central bank borrowing versus peer-to-peer lending, right? So you're just like borrowing from the central bank, from the protocol for stablecoins, and on Aave, right? You're just borrowing from other people. But yeah, it's fundamentally the same requirement about the Oracle.
So basically, this is only one use case, the lending protocols.
Yes.
It's difficult.
Betting.
I was trying to
Betting.
understand, but who?
Betting.
Betting. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, prediction markets.
I mean, maybe with options, yeah, they might eventually need, that kind of press Oracle eventually. I'm not sure.
That's also, by the way, like.
But that's a minor use case, right?
Betting.
Yeah, on-chain options. I mean, it's cool, but I'm not. It's very technical, so I think there is it's not very popular in terms of like how many users are using it, but yeah.
So I think two cases really. First is a lending protocol. Second is betting, of course. Betting. I mean, imagine the Pancake, and they have a game, like to engage the users, like predict the price for Ethereum like next 5 minutes. And then people are, I think it's actually one of the most popular applications in DeFi right now, because you can just guess what's going on. Ilya,
or you can use the verified random data feed in order to actually like play some lottery. And actually, there's another app on PancakeSwap which is called Lottery. I think they use like random fluctuations for that. So yeah. Anyway, so we have a bunch of questions coming in. So I think we should wrap up the presentation soon, and then I'll be asking you. So the next topic is on-chain analytics.
First of all, I want to ask the question from you guys: what is your favorite on-chain analytic tool currently on the market? Like, what do you think?
Well, I open up Scan and I'm trying to parse those transactions myself. That's my favorite. But actually, GTON Analytics is pretty good because it allows you to create sort of custom dashboards for any type of task. So I would say that would be my favorite one. So what's yours?
Mine is GTON as well, because I can create my own dashboards.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys, Alex, Felipe?
I find interesting Nansen, because it's like really a cash cow. If you see the price that they were charging, it's quite impressive.
No, I myself, I'm just writing smart contracts, so I don't.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but I show my respect to them. Great business.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Because high demand. So anyway, let's look at the GTON analytics, and then we'll answer the questions from the community. So as we mentioned before, why we like GTON analytics, basically because anyone is able to create the own custom dashboards. And if you look at the website, you'll find a lot of custom dashboards with the rating system, with the comments, whatever. It's just like how it works. Ilya, please, next slide.
Give me a second. I just really need to plug my charger really fast. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So speaking about the dashboards, all information is actually about the dApps is on chain. So it's easy to actually the index the transactions and everything that happened on chain, and then using the simple SQL scripts, you can create your own dashboards, numbers, ratings, sorting tables, whatever you want, right? So and in this example, you can see that it's basically DEX metrics built by some guy, Haga etc. I have no idea, but it is popular dashboard with many likes and shares. And here you can find the metrics around the aggregators and DEXs and DEX aggregators. So of course, since it's custom, it doesn't mean that the information on the dashboard, like do analytics, is always true. It's just like how some guy with some nickname created the SQL request and visualize it. So of course, then you are using that, you have to check by yourself like what it is, or ask somebody who has an experience, is it true or not? Because I heard a lot of rude conversations between different DeFi people, analysts or project founders or investors, whatever, that some dashboards made by non-competent or with some mistakes, and somehow it was pretty influencing for decision making. So of course, because it's custom dashboards, you have to trust to the person who did this analytics, because despite the fact that it's on-chain, you can write different SQL requests. And on the next slide, please, Ilya, you'll see that how it's actually working. So you'll see how any dashboard is creating. So you have to find the way how you're visualizing the data. For example, it can be one number, it can be like table, it can be sorting list, it can be, I don't know, pie chart, whatever you're gonna show. And to visualize that, to create this dashboard, you have to create the SQL script. The SQL is basically the language for the tables. You can select something from the tables, you can filter, you can merge, you can join, whatever. Like do some kind of magic you can do with Excel, but with a programming like interface, SQL. So yeah, this is like one of the most popular tool right now. We like it because anyone is able to create the dashboard. In our team, we're also using that. I hope Anker is also using that as well, right? For the internal
we actually hired like an intern data scientist, and he created like a bunch of boards for us. So we're still improving those ones, but we also use GTON analytics.
So and
such a nice tool, because before you had GTON analytics, I think the most important problem they had to solve in order to set up a nice dashboard was how to cache data effectively, and that was probably the major pain point of every data analyst who would be needing to work with like blockchain data. But GTON analytics solves this perfectly, so it's quite a nice solution. So Alexei, I wanted to continue.
Yeah, of course, it's not like real-time data. Of course, it's the data is delayed. So if you need some kind of fast infrastructure with the data, probably it's better to have your own indexing servers and some big data tools, like I don't know, Spark, to proceed transactions. But if you are doing like BI, for example, you have company and the company is doing strategic planning for the next quarter or whatever, and you have to use the data, you have to rely on the data, you can just create the dashboard on GTON and look at it. Or if you are journalist or DeFi researcher, you can also do it. So yeah, nice tool, try to use it. I hope there will be more tools in the space. I don't like then the only one company solving the big issue, because it's always the question of potential centralization or paywall for the people, because if you have popular software, you can anytime make it expensive for anyone. So I hope there will be more competition, because it will be helpful for anyone in the space to collaborate. So yeah, I think we're done with the topics. Let's answer the questions from the community.
Yeah, sure. I have to open them up on a separate device, because I still want to continue sharing my screen in case we need to open up any slides to demonstrate something. So let me just start from the very first question. It's a very I would say it's a very complex question, but anyway, when you say that a DeFi app is decentralized, what does it imply from the infrastructure perspective? I mean, what elements of infrastructure must be used to make a dApp decentralized? In what way, or a combination? It's interesting that in the name of the concept itself, decentralized app, it is implied that it is decentralized, but what kinds of features or what kinds of foundational
Yeah, I can give an example about
Sure.
liquid staking, like liquid staking on BNB, for example. So for BNB liquid staking, there is obviously different layers, and some are decentralized, some less. So like the first level, if you think about staking, is about the validator nodes. So we use like several validator nodes. So we're just delegating to existing validator nodes. If we will only delegate to anchor validator nodes, because we also have a validator node there, that will be obviously centralized. So the more you delegate to other validator nodes, that makes it more decentralized. Well, then you have the basically like a ratio, and the ratio is basically calculating basically how much staked assets you have, including the rewards, when compared to the amount of liquid staking tokens in calculation. And that's basically how then you derive, you know, the staking APY as well. So for example, that part is currently managed by our backend. So ideally, you will then have, you know, like you will need to kind of outsource that to like a keeper nodes that will basically then check that information. There is also a tool that we're using. It's a Forta. It's like a monitoring system. So we had our own like internal monitoring tools, but now we're also using Forta, which is basically verifying, you know, if there is any metrics that can be, you know, maybe the ratio is kind of not moving or is moving in a strange way. And that implies that maybe the APY just dropped too much and there is, you know, a problem and you need to receive a notification. So they have what they call scan nodes, for example, to power their monitoring system. So that's, you know, another level that you can potentially also decentralize. Yeah, I mean, even the staking APY as well, you know, do you trust like Anchor backends to give you that figure? Or do you want to also, you know, outsource that to keeper nodes and so on and so forth? So yeah, there is actually multiple dimensions when we talk about decentralization. And yeah, for dApps, they're not necessarily yeah, all decentralized fully, right? You need to assess all these dimensions and see. And multiple dApps have different levels of decentralization if you look at it like holistically.
Thanks a lot for your response. We got to check whether we lost Alexei or because I can't see his video. I'm not sure. No, he's back.
Yes, everything's fine. I was just trying to look at the questions in the chats.
Okay, no problem. So did you find any questions that you like in particular? Maybe you can pick one.
Yeah, there's one question about like what is the best node providers for the multi-chain products, and I think nothing specific in this question, but yeah, let's just try to answer the best node providers for the multi-chain products.
Well, I will say Anchor. No, we do support. Sense. We do, yeah, we do support more than 10 different networks. I think we're also quite good on BNB chain. Yeah, I think if you're like a dApp that are in multiple networks like Sushi, for example, so we've been working with them, for example, you know, to make them move into Anchor, because it's just very cumbersome that you have your RPC nodes from, I don't know, Infura on Ethereum, and then you work with Morales for some other chains, and then you work with, you know, some other provider on one specific chain. So SushiSwap is probably one of the dApps that supports the most, like the largest amount of networks. And currently, I think there is only 3 networks that we're not supporting from like the, I don't know, 17 or 20. They really have quite a lot of networks that they support.
Cool. Let's go next.
Yeah, sure. I think the next question I would like to ask is, give me a second, I lost it. So what would be the weakest point in the whole infrastructure landscape, in your opinion?
I'll try answer and then probably someone else. The last, I think Web3 fuck up, actually, we can call it fuck up, was then Infura stopped working. And the whole, you know, the DeFi space realized how it's actually centralized in terms of, you know, in terms of RPC nodes. Like, and basically people they just didn't get it. Like, they were believing that the blockchain must work, right? And the DApp, because it's on the blockchain, must work like 24 hours, 7 days, right? But then it happened, and people started raising the question: is it like a big fake or something is wrong with it? So I think the lack of decentralization here is still we can still facing, and we need more you know, tools for reliability. Like we have to have more balancers like between different RPC nodes, and more market approaches for anyone to run its own node, like Felipe mentioned with a marketplace of RPCs, right? But yeah, it's really needed.
Yeah, but the issue here is also because it's part of the market, and on the market, especially that's not really regulated, some things might happen that, for example, in Infura is like getting like kickbacks or something from Metamask. Like, I'm not saying that they're doing it, but anyway, like they want to be like the sole provider for Metamask, for example, because there's a lot of money in that, and so it's really hard when market has to decide for you, like how exactly to make sure that everything, there are no monopolies, because unfortunately, if someone is pushing hard enough, when there is so much money at stake, monopolies can occur. So yeah, as a community, probably we also have to vote like with our wallets basically, and like to decide where to store our wallets, how to make sure that we're not like putting all the eggs in one basket, etc. So it's not that easy.
There is also like hosting nodes. Most hosts node nodes with AWS, right?
Yes.
So
that's also true. Yeah, actually right now we've got the same issue because we're launching our own L2. I mean, to make sure that the infrastructure is reliable and like it works across regions, and etc. So yeah, it's a tough one. You really need to have like load balancers and stuff to make sure that there's one interface, but it's like all the nodes are working correctly, and like it can serve users all the time. So yeah, it's always
and
tough.
Also, I think, I mean, we saw many hacks, but with the bridges as well, you know, the more there is chains, the more there is cross chain as well. You know, bridges is also, you know, it's basically honeypots, right? Because they're kind of custodial. So hopefully we will reach a point where, you know, there is like native cross-chain tokens and they just mint and burn, you know, tokens from one chain to another without having to make those custodial bridges. But that's difficult, right? Because then that will be, maybe this is something we're looking into, for example, for sidechains. But obviously then, you know, the token of a sidechain is like natively a new token. So then we can explore that kind of thing, which is basically cross-chain communication, right? But yeah, custodial bridges as we know them today is definitely like a risk. And when we discuss with partners, you know, Web2 companies willing to go to Web3, considering to have their own sidechain, this is the biggest concern that they have currently. It is really how to transfer money from one chain to another, and knowing that there is these bridges. These bridges are like intermediary banks, right? So, you know, you will like to basically decentralize that and just use like a network of relay nodes, ideally, multiple networks of relay nodes actually, to make sure that then you're transferring value from one chain to another. But, you know, I think SushiSwap, they call it teleport, because they're also working like on cross-chain swaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're building, I mean, they're contributing with a standard where, yeah, you basically just teleport the token. So if you have token like XYZ, yeah, then if you want to move it there, you just burn it on the source chain and you mint it on the destination chain, and vice versa. So yeah, that's why they call it teleports. but then you need, well, then there is a huge risk on the relay nodes, right? So it becomes almost as crucial as validator nodes themselves, right? Because you're literally like moving money from one place to another, right? So
and
that's
every
why,
like every additional actor here is actually additional point of failure.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, so that's why, like, for example, I think they were working with Stargate and with AnySwap. Well, now it's multichain.xyz, because they can allow also having custom calls, like transfer token A from chain like 1 to chain 2, and then, you know, do a swap. So they need to do a subsequent action, you know, on the destination chain. They cannot just stop there because they want to do cross-chain swaps. But yeah, it's yeah, they need to rely on multiple networks of nodes, right? So they cannot only rely like on Chainlink or on multichain.xyz. They will ideally rely on multiple networks. Yeah, because there is like literally money involved here with the transfer of money. So yeah, that's quite important. We'll see how it evolves.
Actually, going back to your previous point, there's a question about different kinds of decentralized cloud solutions. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to touch upon that space, but we already have to wrap up maybe soon. So maybe I'll pick another question to end our live stream with, or maybe Alexei, do you have any
Yeah, I have it.
proposals on what? Okay, sure.
I was just reading because, you know, every time to to see the questions, exciting. So there is actually one interesting question, and I have no answer to it, but we have to discuss because it's important. Shouldn't on-chain governance be assigned to the infrastructure as well? Met exams asking.
Well, it kind of is happening.
Right?
Like you are doing this by your usage of some sort of service, because yeah, you're not doing it directly, because of course you can't really control entities who are providing money, you know, to build infrastructure and stuff. But yeah, in a sense, you're doing it by using a certain service.
Yeah, but like it is an important topic, right? Because one of the most decentralized, I can say, the infrastructure right now is Ethereum chain, right? So most of the people dApps and trust around it. But if you look at the how decision is making, it is not even close to the DAO, right? I mean, it is consensus building something, and you know, you can use it or you can build your own, but no one will use yours because the resource allocation are different. I mean, those who actually collected the money, they created all the, you know, entities for the blockchain itself, except miners. Probably miners is it's pretty obvious business model. So of course there is a community of miners. But in terms of, like, you know, communications tools with the with the Ethereum, and, you know, like wallets and projects which are providing infrastructure, like it is not even close to the DAO, right? So we have some lack of
I think for like Ethereum specifically, how to further develop the platform is like highly technical. I'm not sure if, you know, just like on-chain governance will be, you know, very useful. Maybe like you can have some like Q&A questions, and you have a highly technical team that is like exploring, you know, several options and getting like feedback from the community. But ultimately the decision is like probably something like very technical oriented, and it's the decision should not be just based on like taste of, you know, you like it or not. I don't know. It's very difficult when the more technical it becomes, the more difficult I think it's the more difficult it is to include on-chain governance. I think, but it will be desirable to outsource some sort like of relatively easy decisions, right, to the community. But, you know, I think there will always be some aspects that will be difficult to outsource to the community.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, to build upon that point, I think that every blockchain should strike a balance between those different groups of people that are interested in promoting the blockchain further. Like, if the decisions are made disproportionately by the miners, for instance, on chain, rather than by the developers, it's going to be an imbalance. It's going to lead to an imbalance in the decision making. So I mean, there's always this issue of how do you actually spread this democratic power among the different groups that are interested in the development of the blockchain. Yeah, so I don't really think that we have much time left, but I maybe want to give the floor to Felipe to end. Maybe if you want to tell something else about Anchor or plug something or whatever, just go ahead, you can do that and we will wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, if you're interested in multi-chain RPC nodes, like come and visit Anchor. So on Anchor, there is more than RPC nodes. There is an enhanced API built on top of the RPC nodes. There is actually gaming SDK if you're interested about gaming. So that also makes it easier for you to build it. If you're interested about sidechains, so we can also support to, basically we call that app chains. So yeah, if you want to build your dApp on your own sidechain, so then you have, your own token with your own validators. Yeah, and you can recreate your ecosystem if you want and allow other dApps to build, on your sidechain if you wish. Gaming is very heavy in terms of infrastructure, so if you have multiple games like on the main chain, that will, congest the network. So sidechains is a solution to basically scale that. Yeah, we have also Anchor Scan. It's a multi-chain blockchain explorer, and liquid staking, obviously, which is a part that I'm responsible of. So on Ethereum, BNB, Avalanche, Phantom, and Matic, also Polkadot. So yeah, if you're interested about staking and liquid staking, yeah, come and visit Anchor, and yeah, feel free to also interact in Twitter or on Telegram. We have also our community moderators that will be more than happy to reply to your questions.
Thank you. So Alex, do you want to wrap up with some mentions of GTON Capital?
Yeah, of course. So it's good to mention because why we are doing such streams, we have to, like, during the bear market, it is very important to keep attention of the users and the attention of the crypto enthusiasts. And we noticed that there are lack of easy and affordable information about how things are working. So we are building the culturalized stablecoin, which is using as a native currency for our own rollup. So we are trying to help with Ethereum scaling with our way to do that. And the things we are working with, they are actually connecting with many things in DeFi. Speaking about stablecoins, these are lending protocols, oracles, dApps, smart contracts, right? Speaking about the network and infrastructure, of course, it is about oracles, it is about validators, it is about wallets. So, and this is actually our approach to educate not only our community, but also the anyone. We have partnership with the Web3 London. Those are crypto enthusiasts. So, and we are trying to bring more affordable knowledge about how everything works. We'll try harder. We'll try be more structured. Probably after the series of live streams, we'll think about the online course with the practices as well, because I think it's also important. So join us, and welcome to the next stream next week. Thank you, Felipe.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.